Hi, it's Charles Kelly, Money Tips. Welcome. Today I have a very special guest with me today. Welcome, Dr. Achala Demel. Welcome.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation to join.
Great, great. I met Doctor at a pitching meeting when lots of new businesses were pitching their new businesses to investors. And I was very interested in what she said and about her business. So I invited her onto this podcast. But Dr. Achala is the founder of New Tissue. She's an expert in tissue engineering and the regenerative medicine, and has published articles in this field in journals including Nature Regenerative Medicine. She has a 12-year plus experience in applied uh, biomaterials and issue engineering, including experience in clinical studies evaluating off-the-shelf electrotherapy devices and wounds. Her experience and expertise has been applied in leading multidisciplinary teams and technically complex projects in planning, healthcare, engineering, design, and management. She has funding bids for New Tissue and successfully managed and delivered funding projects. And with her team at New Tissue, she has just launched a wound management platform as part of a wider virtual wound ward, and the company is developing to tackle the problems within the NHS and globally. I believe you have a trial going on with the NHS. So welcome. It's great to see you. And you're the founder of this business. So you've started this business yourself. I mean, tell me what got you into this? Was it because of your studies? What got you into this? What made you think about this is something I want to do?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you firstly for the introduction, Charles. Thank you for that. That's a very long introduction. I wasn't expecting you to.
Okay, no problem.
Um, yeah, so I started this because as you said, so I was looking at tissue engineering and sort of what to do when a tissue is damaged or diseased. So that was something I was looking at for nearly 10 years. And so that sort of I was always looking at the problems of how to solve when tissues are damaged and diseased. And I was looking at it from an academic point of view, from a research point of view. But then I did a program in entrepreneurship in Nottingham, and then I
Okay.
wanted to explore how this could be a commercial venture so that it can reach to more wider sort of users and have an impact. Because in academia, it's more yeah, you find what's happening, but there's a limitation to how you can reach to with the solution. So it was a different angles, and I thought that would make it more impactful. Not that academia is not impact. I wanted to. That's the reason I wanted to start this. And then initially, I was looking at facial reconstruction with 3D printing and materials, uh, bespoke structures with materials. But then when I started looking at users and who would be most interested in these solutions, more and more it became evident that there's a bigger problem with wounds and more chronic wounds. So these are wounds that don't heal within 3 to 6 months. So as that's a bigger problem, and then I thought it's good to start with that
Mm.
problem. And then also in the academia, I was looking at, as I said, what to do with wounds and tissue damage, I came across electrostimulation as a solution, and a company sort of presenting a device with a solution. And I was interested purely from an academic point of view, trying to understand how electrostimulation is useful to close a wound. So I was researching on that with the company's device. And then and it was really, really amazing to see wounds that don't heal for years that
Years, really.
just closes with electrostimulation. And then I also myself organized the device to as a compassionate case. And then 3 years, wounds don't heal. And then within 6 months, and the gentleman didn't want to use it continuously, but periodically with the carers. And then after 6 months, on and off, the wound closed. So that was like really first-hand experience. But so
What happened to
that's
that? What happened to that device then? What happened to that research you were doing? Did it get taken up by somebody to develop a product?
no, it's a product that's available in the market. So there's like
Oh, I
a
see.
wide number of electrostimulation devices that's still there. And it's a device that's been in the market, and I don't know the ownership, etc. So that's, I think, yeah, it's still available. And there are lots of electrostimulation devices in the market anyway. So
Okay.
then you'll wonder, what are we doing with our system? So what we're doing is exactly to address the sort of limitations with the current electrostimulation devices. So that particular device, for example, is whilst it's delivering electrostimulation, it's a little bit complex to apply. So you'll have to have it attached, firstly attached to the mains, as in it's wired. So the
Mm.
patient needs to be closer to a charging port, and then you have a lot of complexity in administration. So it becomes a little tedious for the carer or the healthcare service providers, and also it's a little well, the patients prefer if they don't have to be attached to it for a lengthy time. So those are the things that we've implemented in our system. So no wires, and it's easy to apply. So as we say, it's a plaster. So like you apply a band-aid, and then you can sort of, you're not attached to wires or sort of needing to focus on charging, etc. And you can monitor how you're doing remotely with your personal device, so a phone or a laptop,
Okay.
which makes it
Can I just stop
convenient.
you? So this is your product now, the e-plaster. It's a plaster or bandage that goes over a wound, and this is you can monitor this from your phone. Is that right?
Yes, that's a product that Near Tissue I'm developing at the moment with
Okay.
the team. So not just myself. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
experts doing that
Yeah.
with me. And but that part is in development. So we hope to have e-plaster in the market in later 2025, 26.
Okay.
And that will be part of the virtual wound ward, as I call it. So the reason virtual wound ward is that you can apply that and have it administered and monitored remotely, virtually.
Okay.
But the wound management arm of the virtual wound ward is what we've launched early in June, that enables connection to patients and providers to be able to streamline the process of wound care.
Okay. Because I guess if that's a problem, the NHS must be spending a lot of money going back and forward to patients, or maybe they're still in hospital where their wound will not heal. So this could potentially save the NHS and ultimately the taxpayer, us, because we put billions into the NHS, could save us a lot of money and as well as doing a lot of good out there, I guess. And so there must be a big market for so it's just like a plaster that goes on a wound, but you can monitor it electronically to see if the wound is healing. Is that correct? Have I got that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And electrostimulation is, as I said, is known to, and not just the studies that I've done with the devices, it's established to as a as a method to close wounds,
Okay.
and rapidly and completely. So right now, as you said, there's a huge amount of cost allocated to sort out wounds that don't heal. So just to quantify that statement.
Yeah.
Retrospective studies in 2017-18 shows that the NHS, not privates, but just the NHS, had spent around £5.6 billion um, looking at or managing non-healing wounds.
Right. £5.6 billion managing just
5.6 billion
cuts and
pounds.
wounds,
Yeah,
which sounds
yeah.
like a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a huge. I mean, like it's a significant proportion, but I guess like in the grand scheme of things, even in the grand scheme of things, I think 5.6 billion is relatively a large number, um, and it becomes even more significant when you think about that 70% of that is spent on 70% of wound management is
Yeah.
spent on healthcare services, not products. So you would use dressings and things related to products. That's just less than 30%.
Wow, it's unbelievable. So it's potentially a huge market. So
Yeah.
uh, this plaster not only can monitor the wound, but it can provide some electrostimulation. Is that right?
Yeah, it has a treatment arm and also a diagnostic arm. That's within the plaster. So that, as I mentioned, that'll be in 2026. But right now, what we have is a wound management arm. So what that's going to do is, and when I mentioned about the cost that's now driving for the wound care market in the UK, that also adds to a huge number of healthcare visits that
Yeah.
drives the cost, and time spent per patient. And that includes administration and sort of record keeping, etc. But again,
Yeah.
if you are to, one is to, that you if you have to do that, that's one. But then also being able to have it, more streamlined so that can we save more time per patient, and therefore can you see more patients within a given time? So can you release capacity and resources to the NHS? So imagine a scenario where you've seen
Yeah.
all of the wound care patients, and then there's enough to look after others, and then maybe have less waiting times. And that's what we want to do with the wound management platform, which we have launched, to streamline the process. So making everything admin process objective and being able to do things that are repetitive to make it easy. So we have functions and features in the platform to make that possible.
Okay, because the NHS spent quite a few billion pounds on revamping its IT system. And yet, from my experience using the app, it seems quite fragmented. And one doctor told me, "Oh, we don't see that because that comes from a different trust, and we don't always see this." So he couldn't even find the records that I'd had from another hospital. So it's not an integrated system. So there must be some work to be done there. But it's fascinating what you've done, and you've done this pretty much yourself. You've bootstrapped the whole thing. You funded this yourself, or did you get any investment for this?
I was fortunate to win some grant funding, and then I had a very small, when I say very small, it's a relative term, small amount at the very beginning, from an investor, around £60,000, to start to rent a space and to get small equipment,
Okay.
and that got started, and then that's since 2021, and then I've been running the company with 5 people, I mean, average of 5 employees. And so grants, and then all my savings are in this. So this
Well,
is how much I trust in this process. So
you really believe
it's,
in it. Yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, like, yes, yeah. So, I mean, there are lots of risks, but the process, it's logical, how we are approaching this, and we've developed, as I mentioned, so we've launched this June. It's a small step towards the bigger virtual wound board. So it's going in the right direction, but there's still a lot of challenges to navigate, but it's methodical, and I can see, where we're heading. We have to navigate, um, sort of the compliance aspects. So
Yes.
these
Yeah.
are things that's needing to do, but it's going. So yeah, it's and I see how it can really impact, one, bring resilience to people who have wounds, because it just wipes off the whole of the livelihood with the chronic wound. And then you think, like, the market, the wound care market is growing exponentially, but then if people are suffering like this with the wounds, there must be something that's not addressing. So this is what we are doing. And
Yes.
and we take a unique approach, because there are electrostimulation devices, there are, digital applications and dressings, etc. But our product sort of integrates all of these things in a unique way, and I think that's why we have a very good approach in addressing this problem. It's still a way to go, but it's not too long. That's in 2026 is when we want to have it in the market.
So you're obviously actively seeking investors. You're looking for investment into the company. So you're at the stage where you need to go to the next level. So you're actually seeking investors. And I know you've talked to some investors already. So is that right? You're looking for investment, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Going.
I mean, that's where I sort of I had a chance to meet you. I yes, absolutely. So I want to have investment to resource the activities in bringing the virtual wound ward, the management arm, towards adoption and diffusion within the UK, and also there are features. So it's version one. There are lots of other features that we need to integrate to make it, that much the things that we want to be able to add. So to bring that, so that's one. And we have two developers really, like it's a really small team and we are doing sort of 10 people's work at the moment. Fine, we are enjoying it. But it becomes so much like there's so much to do. So this is why we want to have funding. And then secondly, the e-plaster, we have again a functional electronics, one version of it, but now we are developing a sort of an upgraded version of the core functionality, and then it needs to be integrated with the form factor and industrial design aspect. So then do the whole compliance piece on that. So this needs funding, and then overall sort of bringing that to market.
There's so much to think about, isn't there? So much to do, and I can see why you need this investment. You can't just keep funding it yourself. I mean, it's a potentially huge market. You're a small company, but there's so much potential there. So what would you be offering investors? You offer them equity in your company? How would it work? I mean, what sort of percentage of the company are you prepared to offer an investor who comes in? I guess it depends on how much they invest, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, it's equity is what I'm offering, and then also they can be part of this. I think it's a nice thing to be able to be part of being able to sort out the problem of wounds, and
Yeah.
it's a quite a impactful venture to be part of. So that's an opportunity, and then part in terms of it's a being part of the market. So that's being able to have shares. That's another thing. And with regards to how much, yes, as you mentioned, depends on the
You
amount
could
of money.
discuss that directly with the investor. I mean, and we talked about the UK, but I guess worldwide, this must be an even bigger problem. If you think of developing countries and where they perhaps haven't got the healthcare, it must be a huge problem all over the world.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. The drivers are diabetes is one of the key problems,
right,
and so our solution is to close a wound within 46 weeks. So right now, the problem is that a wound would not close within 4.5 months, and we want to close it within 46 weeks. So then you think, so what's next? If you close all the wounds, where is the income from the from the product? But fear not, because there's things to solve still, because diabetes is really exponentially growing, and then
yeah,
also uh, aging population, that's another problem. So you would ask, like, if we have a cut, a generally healthy person, if we have a cut, we tend to be okay, like it will heal. So what's the problem is if you have underlying conditions like diabetes or venous ulcer, even infection. So you can have a surgery, but if you're all good, you tend to heal. But if it's infected, then that's where this chronic wound problem happens. And then old age, because we have something called a skin battery that helps us heal when we have an injury.
right.
But what happens is this skin battery becomes less functional either because of these underlying conditions or even old age. Old age is a relative term, I have to say. But
Right.
um, and so that drives this problem. So what we're doing with electrostimulation in a very abstract way is to reboot this skin battery. And it's shown that 1 to 2% of the populations, not only developing countries, but in developed countries, 1 to 2% of population, it's estimated that they will undergo or will experience chronic wounds. So
Right.
it's a
So there'll always be a
it,
market there. Even if you cure one person, it doesn't mean that's the end of it. There'll always be other people having wounds.
unfortunately, yeah. And so it's the wound like it would be okay if you heal, but the problem is when you have these other associated conditions and also
Yeah.
infection. So another thing with electrostimulation is that it's a dual purpose. It acts as an antimicrobial system as well. So there is a huge problem with antibiotic resistance at the moment.
Yeah.
So do you want to, if you have infection, how much antibiotics do you want to give, And
Yeah.
that's also another problem. So it could be an answer to that. And we haven't done a specific study to validate that, but it's very well known. And electrostimulation can kill bactericidal and bacterial inhibition as well. So that's another
So you
angle.
mentioned diabetes, and we know that due to diet and the Western diet and the overeating of carbs and sugar in the diet, and this, you only got to walk down the high street and you just see shops selling bread and cakes and fast food and sweet things. Obviously, diabetes is on the rise here and in the US, and I've noticed it in Asia as well. As they're adapting a Western style diet, they're getting more diabetes. Why does that matter in terms of getting a wound? Why would diabetes affect wound healing?
So it comes down to the mechanisms. So some of the mechanisms that the condition diabetes is influencing is just stop blood flow. So and also there are factors that so this is again I will have to explain so there are things like so in your blood flow you have in your blood vessels you have an underlying inner lining that maintains the vessel in a good condition. So in the condition of diabetes, these the factors in the innermost layer, endothelium, it's
Okay.
called in the innermost layer, that gets affected. So that then leads to not having good enough blood flow um, to uh, to a wound site, and that's why if you have diabetes and if you have a wound afterwards, you don't have that good vascularization that generally happens to close the wound,
And you
and
hear
that's
about
why
people having amputations even with
yeah,
diabetes. Yeah, because the
yeah. So
circulation is not there.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, I think, this fact, because people talk about cardiovascular problems, cancer. Yes, they are big problems,
Yeah.
but then wounds are sort of almost, disregarded. But it's shown that if somebody has a breast, prostate, or colon cancer, apparently they can live 5 years more than somebody who had a diabetic foot ulcer. So amputation,
Wow.
and then and this is a fact. So I think that puts things into perspective of the significance of wounds.
Yeah.
It's not the wound, but what happens when it's chronic. That's the thing. And then to the point of diet and diabetes, then I think somebody could think, could we prevent diabetes, and then problems will be less. Absolutely.
Mm. Yeah.
And even in the case of having a chronic wound, very important that you have a good diet and have, not smoke, not drink, and that has an impact. So I know colleagues who've looked after patients in possibly that you describe as a deprived area, and then maybe looking people who are looking after themselves well, and there's apparently a significant difference in how they recover, even they're experiencing the same, problem. So it's very
Yeah.
important to like prevent.
Yeah. There's a difference in life expectancy in the UK. If you live in Kensington or Westminster, and you live in parts of the Northeast or Scotland that actually have a few years lower life expectancy, let alone health problems. And so even in this country, which is relatively wealthy country, there are still disparities between communities that live on the edge and they perhaps eat a lot of the wrong foods. So I think in terms of this, there's a huge market in this country, in around the world, and we've got Donald Trump, of course, appointing JFK, saying he's going to get America healthy again. We have a new government here, and the health minister Wes Streeting said he's going to reform this. Well, they all say that when they come in, they're going to reform the NHS. But I think you're probably coming at the right time, and it's a great opportunity for investors if you want to get involved in this. I think that there is an opportunity here because presumably you'll once this comes to the market, you'll eventually look for what will be the exit route for an investor if they are given equity. When would they expect to get a return on their money, or would it be if you float or get taken over by somebody or get venture capitals involved? What would be the route to exit?
It's yeah, I mean I'm sort of contemplating what that might be, but I think it would be good to be I don't know, I think it could be
I guess it depends
these
what how it transpires. You might get a takeover bid. You might get anything could happen, couldn't it?
yeah, I mean there are multiple options and I think and then also there's a lot of things that new tissue can do, not only having the E plus out. There's a lot of things. Yes. So right now, I can't say exactly how that might be, but all of these options that you mentioned, that could be, but being yeah, I can't say it right now, but
Okay.
all of the options are possible, and then it has to make sense, and it has to make sense for the company, and also the vision of how it's going to impact. Um,
Yeah.
the overall sort of why we started in the first place.
Yeah. I think from an investor point of view, I think an investor would want to know when they're putting money into anything, whether it's a bank or a
Yes.
property or shares, you know, how long is my money going to be there for? What return will I get? Will I get my money back, or what's the chances? I know this is a high risk investment. It's not like buying shares in Glaxo or
Yes.
a big drugs company. You know that they're going to pay a dividend and you'll get your money back at some stage if you want to sell the shares. But I think people want some assurance as to what they're going to get for their money, what they would expect to get in the future. It's not something they're going to get an instant return on, but I expect you're looking for several years ahead before this would maybe fully
Yeah.
come to the market, fully be impacted, and then it could just take off. It could skyrocket, couldn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah,
just a
absolutely.
limit.
And no, absolutely. So in the first instance, we started with ePlaster, that ePlaster will have this virtual ward, but now we've sort of made it possible that we can start generating revenue relatively early with the wound management arm. So I think that should give some assurance to any investor that, we are sort of looking at how we can minimize the risks and also bring in the impact as we evolve. So I mean, it's not tomorrow that the result will be, but it's not too far. So we are looking at 2026 to
But
have E
to
plus.
generate revenue.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
we look to generate revenue with the virtual wound board from next year. And so because that's we are going through the last stages of compliance and
Right.
it's ready. So we want to and I think as you mentioned, the current the government has recognized the significance of digitizing. Yes, we have an NHS digital system, but as you very well recognize, it's a little fragmented. And also, if you look at chronic wounds and wound treatment, is it directly can somebody directly use that? There are things that have got gaps. So that's what we've addressed with we call it New Tissue X, the digital platform for wounds.
Okay.
And that can link to NHS and then make that impactful. So it's a good time for things to happen, but people need to understand and we need to introduce it widely. So we just launched in June and are going through the compliance aspects. So I think if people are if wound clinics are not having a digital system, I'd like to speak with them and then introduce this. And then if they are using it, I'd like to see, what are the gaps, because we are really providing a holistic solution for wounds with our system. We really worked end to end, and so it should really impact. So um, if yeah, I'd like to work with clinical, wound clinics, and also if the government can recognize the significance of what we are doing, and if there's a way to, present that, then I think it's a nice thing. And
Yeah.
e-plaster should 2026 make a difference. And for the users, it's just a matter of clicking another button and then applying the wound dressing when they're on our platform. So it shouldn't make it too difficult for them to start using ePlaster when it's ready.
So there's the software side, which I assume you'd be licensing to the user. So that's where the revenue would come from there,
Yeah, as a subscription. So
subscription model.
yes,
And
subscription model.
I imagine, I mean, to me, it seems ripe for a larger software company or a drugs company to come in and say, well, we like this product, we want to buy you or work with you to take it to another level. That's it would seem to me that that's where this could go in the future. But obviously, this is not a standard type of investment. This is for the sophisticated type of investor, sometimes called an angel investor or a venture capitalist or somebody that knows what they're doing. And this is not for the average investor. And I'm not giving anybody investor advice here or telling people to invest. All I'm doing is introducing someone to say, well, this is what I'm doing. And also to talk about fundraising, because there are a lot of new businesses starting every year. And in London, there is a good market for fundraising. Companies like SFC Capital have regular events, and they help companies raise money, and they use government schemes like the EIS scheme to save tax. So if you invest via one of these schemes, you can get tax relief and tax benefits. But again, talk to your advisor about this. But there is quite a healthy market in the UK for using investors' money, called other people's money, which is what I wrote about in my book, Borrow and Grow Rich. It's about how companies and countries and kings and queens for centuries have used other people's money to get things off the ground. I mean, Bill Gates did, everybody did. The founders of Google and Facebook could never have got to that level without having investors involved in using other people's money. So I think you've got a fantastic product here. And, I look forward to seeing you on the front page of the Financial Times in a few years' time. And Dr. Achala has just sold out for, $1 billion to XYZ. And then the
But
shareholders will be cracking open the champagne because suddenly they made their money.
the wound care market, it's more than 22 billion
Money too.
globally. 22 billion plus. So when the UK market is 8.3, not just chronic wounds, 8.3 billion, the UK market. So this is calculated bottom up. So looking at the number of patients and the cost involved. So 8.3. But then market research, global market research, it shows 22.6, I think, billion global market. But that doesn't. I think it should be more than 2026, 2020. 22 billion, more
Yeah.
than 22 billion globally, because if the UK is just 8.3 and it ought to be much more. So that's a huge market. And we are not saying sort of we are, all of it, but it's a significant proportion.
That's amazing. It's something that I've only thought about since I've met you, and I hadn't even thought about wound care market. You just think someone has a wound, you put a
Yes.
bandage on it, you spray some
Yeah.
stuff on it, you put some Germaline on it, and it heals. You don't think that wounds could be not healed for 2 or 3 years. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. And it really, like you mentioned, sort of, it really takes the livelihood away, not just the patient, but the patient's family. And it's just really unpleasant. And it takes away, talk about productivity and people being at work.
Mm.
That's just really stops them. And then also people caring, they also stop working. So it's just overall, there's an interest, I think, for people to get better, and also um, even the carers, like making it easy for the carers. So this is what the digital platform is doing. So making it easy for them to be looked after.
And it can lead
Um,
to infection, I guess. If you've got an open wound, that's open to infection, isn't it? So that can lead to
yeah,
further
yeah,
problems and
yeah. So that's like a
gangrene and yeah,
yeah, it's a cyclic thing. So and the healing process mechanism wise, as in biological mechanisms, it's quite complex. It has like 5 stages, not like it has 5 stages in the
okay,
healing process. So if you miss and certain parts and it becomes stuck in sort of inflammatory state in a negative way. So you need good inflammation, so to say,
right,
in the healing process to happen. But once it's infected and it gets stuck and it doesn't go through the stages of healing, that's the complexity. You have to have angiogenesis and lots of cell recruitment, etc., for 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 a wound to completely heal. So I think that's one of the reasons that why it's a complex. I mean, I think all diseases are complex anyway, but wounds in particular.
this is amazing. It's really opened my eyes. So I'm going to put some details up as to where people can get hold of you that are interested in getting involved or investing. And I really wish you luck with your journey and getting hold of some other people's money. I would have thought the Bill Gates Foundation would be interested in this because they work with countries all over the world, and if this is profitable here, it could be rolled out around the world, definitely, because there must be more problems when you have a wound and you're not even in hospital and you're just in the open air and you've got flies jumping on your leg, and I just can't think how that would impact. And I do a lot of work through Rotary. We've the Rotary Foundation around the world has tried to stop polio and many other things. They have water projects. They have projects helping children go to school and this sort of thing. And it's a big issue. So there's a massive problem around the world. Look at the wars there are just going on at the moment. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's and one of the things is we want to help people even from taking the hospital to home. That's one of the aspects. So even if you're taking care at home, wounds, that to make that better, that's why remote monitoring, remote health with the platform. So that should make a huge difference. And with regards to other people's money, if other people if other people would like to join in this journey, so they will be part of the journey. So it wouldn't be, yes, they're coming from a different angle, but I hope that they will understand the problem that we are solving and they'll be part of it rather than, and then they will ultimately have they'll be shareholders, right? So
That'd be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. So if you're interested, I'll put some details up. You can get hold of Dr. Challa yourself. And it's, as I said, it's for sophisticated investors. I'm not giving anybody investment advice here, but I think it could come at an opportune time because the health service is going through some changes, and remote healing has become the thing now. Often when you call your surgery now, you're not even seeing the doctor. The doctor is talking to you on the phone or on a video call or on Zoom. So this is now becoming the big thing, I think. So this you perhaps come in at the right time. So thank you for joining me. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we end?
well, thank you very much, Charles. That's yeah, that's amazing to be able to speak with you. So thank you for that.
Yeah.